Hi guys, Kim here. So lately I've become aware as to how many of my friends are the youngest child for some weird reason. Having had many conversations about how much this has got to do with the forming of our personalities, I thought it might be pertinent to talk about it with you guys. So when I wrote my book, We Me, one of the chapters is called God's Equation, the Love Child. And during this chapter, I speculated that each family likely had both love children and lust children contained in the family. I meant no offense when I called them those names. It was just likely that the love child was the oldest child and the others would be lust children. During my comprehension of this, I perceived that both lust and love children have an equally difficult path through life. The main difference is that the love's child role is one of responsibility and stability, whereas the lust children is struggle and freedom. This thinking is not meant to produce the idea of any of us being victims. It's just a deeper thinking into why the things are the way they are and why we struggle to understand why people appear to have it easier than us. I did do a video about a year ago that I'll link below if anyone wants to watch it on God's Equation, the Love Child. But for now, I want to focus on what I think I've uncovered about being the youngest child and perhaps why we are the way we are. So one would assume that most of us younger children would be less children, and therefore our path would be struggle and freedom, or striving towards that. So being the youngest child, by the time you've come along, your parents have already had the experience of parenting one child at least. So they're actually like slightly less interested anyway. It's not new to them, and they're slightly less interested in teaching the youngest. The focus and attention just isn't there. I mean, let's face it, you're busy, or they're busy. They're already busy having the responsibilities of the older children to look after, and all of the work in association to that. And then here comes along another child that you don't really have time for. So, from my own perspective, no one really wants to teach me how to fish. Everyone's perfectly happy for me to stay out of their way. They'll cook for me, they'll clean for me, they'll do everything that needs to be done for me, and expect nothing from me other than me to do as I'm told and sit in the corner and be quiet and stay out of their way. So basically, you've got the perfect recipe for a spoiled brat and a lazy child. Plus, you don't really get the opportunity to think for yourself, as there's so many people around you on the hierarchy that are telling you what to do every turn, every step along the way. Having said that, now as an adult, I simply hate being told what to do. I hate people handing me the solution all nicely packaged without the explanation as to how they arrived at it. And I really think it all stems from my childhood, from being told what to do so much, rather than anyone actually showing me what to do or teaching me how to do it. It's just easier for them to get on with it doing themselves, and easier for them to ask the eldest child to help because the younger child would mess it up or would need to be taught, and they just didn't have the time for it. So the general consensus was, oh, just sit there, we'll do it. And then later called me lazy for not knowing how. Anyway, I remember being at boarding school with the nuns and them stripping my bed because I didn't make it right. So I remade it and they stripped it again. It's a totally stupid game. Unfortunately, I was too young to have the language to say, obviously I'm doing something wrong here, can you show me what it is I need to do right? But instead, we just played this game of them stripping their bed and me having to remake it and assume that I know what I'm doing wrong. So, as a child, I lived in a world where everything was done for me, and I really didn't know how to do anything. The older kids were really good to me. They cooked for me, they looked after me, they took care of me, but they themselves were too young to know that teaching me was part of it. The other thing I seem to have in common with other youngest children is we all seem to suffer from low self-esteem, or have suffered from low self-esteem in the past. And I guess that's just a side effect of having been around other people who know how to do stuff and comparing yourself to somebody who knows how to do something. And they're better at it, naturally, because they're older. So they're better at drawing, they're better at painting, they're better at kicking a football around, they're better at doing anything, they're better at riding a bike, they're better at everything. So therefore you've got self-esteem issues from the get-go. So coming back to the lust child scenario, I must admit it sounds like I am having a huge complaint about all of this, and I don't mean to complain. All I'm trying to do is understand how this makes us generically different than other children, as in eldest or middle children. It seems to me that the youngest child often despairs to the degree that most of us seem to have at least contemplated suicide at least once in their lives, whereas the eldest child, and this is again in my experience, hasn't. So this stigma seems to be associated to the path of struggle. Perhaps the idea that we're meant to overcome the idea of being victims and create a greater capacity to see ourselves as such, rather than the eldest who generally don't see themselves as victims ever. I once had a friend with 4 sisters, and she did a degree in counselling at university, and she did a PhD on perceptions from within the family, and she discovered on this journey that each of her sisters had a completely different experience of living in the same family. And to the great degree that when she asked the question, who's the favourite child, each family member came up with a different answer. So again, this leads me to coming back to the idea that there is only one perception, which is your own. There's only one world, which is your own. We can never control another, but we can control our perception as long as we know how to perceive it. And if we can perceive ourselves to overcome wearing the cloak of victim, is actually harder than you think, as we have a tendency to slip back into it if the world around us rewards us for doing so. I guess it's just the idea that since we're the youngest, we've just had so much opportunity to have stuff done for us, which you might think, oh my goodness, that's just so nice. But from the perspective of being the youngest, you don't actually learn how to do stuff, which can be a little bit of a burden later, and it can make us very, very codependent on other people. So, anyway, that was all I really wanted to say about it. I've left a link below to the other Love Child, Lust Child video I did about a year ago, and I'll catch you guys later. Ta-ta for now.